Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to start my weekly reading vlog for week 2 of Shorty September. Yes, it is already September 7th, Saturday, and it is already time for the second week of Shorty September. So I did in fact finish a book on Friday, even though I did not film yesterday. I had a headache most of the day yesterday, so I just didn't feel like filming. So let's talk about it. I finished The Time of My Life, Dirty Dancing by Andrea Warner. I listened to this on audiobook and it was only a few hours long. I think the book is about 150 pages and it's part of this pop culture series of short nonfiction books, basically essay collections about different aspects of pop culture. And this one is specifically about the movie Dirty Dancing, 1987's classic romantic comedy dance crazy movie that I absolutely loved. Came out in 1987. I love that movie. I've watched it many, many times. But this is the first time I've ever read anything, sort of cultural criticism about the movie and what it stood for and what it sort of did at the time for culture. And so it was super interesting because the book talks about how Dirty Dancing has this abortion plot that is very central to the movie, and that it was, it's pretty rare for abortion to be handled the way that it was in Dirty Dancing, where it was a solution to a problem that a character had. It was not vilified. The woman who had the abortion was not talked down to or was not lectured. It was, seen as a reasonable a reasonable action for her to take at that point in her life. And the main character, Baby Houseman, is friends with this woman and helps her out. And because Baby is the main character of the movie, like all of the action centers around how Baby reacts to it, how she thinks about it, how it changes her perspective on the world, because she starts the movie as this very idealistic 17-year-old and she ends the movie having grown up quite a bit. And she realizes a lot of things about her life, about class struggles, and how she comes from upper middle class background, and that her life is not the same as these working class people. So all that kind of stuff is talked about in the book. It's talked about how this is a movie that centers women and women's issues. It centers Baby's concerns, which was very unusual at the time, because most of the other teenage movies from the 1980s usually had the male person, the main character, as sort of the hero of the story. And in this case, Baby really is the hero of the story. And so that was all very interesting. It also talks a lot about the music of the movie, and it doesn't let Dirty Dancing off the hook, because Dirty Dancing very obviously uses a lot of Black music and culture and does not have a lot of Black people in it. So the book interrogates that, which I found that to be really well done. But it also talks about how important the music is to the movie and how much the music played into just getting the movie produced in the first place, but also the enjoyment that you get from this particular movie. So fantastic book. And I only found out that this book even exists by watching Grace over at Books and Cooks talk about it in one of her recent wrap-ups. So I will link Grace's channel down below. She does excellent reviews and she reads a lot of books that deal with social justice issues, and I always get a lot of really great recommendations from her. So definitely encourage you to check out her channel. The book that I am currently reading for Shorty September is Beyond the Spring, Cordelia Stanwood, A Bird's Acre by Chandler S. Richmond. Now, this is a book that was published way back, when was this book originally published? 1978, and it was published by a local press here in Maine. And my uncle gave this book to me. It was a book that he has had on his shelves for many, many years. And in fact, it is signed by the author. So this is not, this would be a book that would be hard to come by, I would imagine. And, to get it anywhere other than Maine, I don't know where you would get it. But this woman, Cordelia Stanwood, she was a teacher and ended up opening up a bird sanctuary in well, I shouldn't say that. I should say she became an ornithologist later on in her life, in her middle age. And she was really an amazing naturalist and biologist, and did a lot of observations about birds and wrote them up and got papers published about them. And after her death, a bird sanctuary was established in the town that she lived in. She lived in Ellsworth, Maine. And that bird sanctuary can still exist today. It's Bird's Acre. And so this is the story of this woman and her historic work in the field of bird biology, and how she came to that work. And she is very interesting, and her work in the field of observing birds is fascinating. There's a lot of excerpts from her field notebooks in this. But it is, I would say that Chandler Richmond is overwriting a lot of this book. Like, the writing is not very good, but the information that's being provided is very good. So I'm enjoying learning more about this woman. And there's just so few books written about early naturalists that were women. She was born in the late 1800s, and so she was doing most of her work like in the early 1900s. And so that's just not, like, this wasn't normal for women in this time period. So I always appreciate learning more about early scientists who were women, and particularly women that were involved in the natural sciences, because that, of course, is my area that I am the most interested in. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. It's about 150 pages, and I am on page 75. So I'm about halfway through this one. And I would also say that it has some really great pictures in it. Like, she took tons of pictures of these birds that she was observing. Like, she would go out all day and watch nests and just observe the behavior of the birds in the nest. And she had like on one day she would write down, like, she had observed like 30 different nests of birds and what they were up to. So like, she was very dedicated to her craft for sure. So that is super fabulous. I'm enjoying my time spent with that. Had my hair cut this morning, so feeling like I am a new woman today. So here we are. I will be back when I have some more information to report on my books. Happy Sunday. I have finished another shorty. So yesterday I finished Beyond the Spring, Cordelia Stanwood of Bird's Acre by Chandler S. Richmond. And I very much enjoyed this. I think it was overwritten in places. The author, it's definitely of its time. I think he started writing this book in the 1950s, and it was published in 1978. So it definitely has that sort of overblown language. It's not minimalist at all, but it had also sections of Cordelia Stanwood's journal entries where she kept detailed observations about the natural world around her, particularly birds. And it also included articles that she published about birds and bird observations, particularly about nesting and raising of young of different songbirds in Maine, which was fascinating. And she used to take, this was in like between 1905 and 1920, basically. And she used to take baby birds out of the nest and take the babies to a photography studio in Ellsworth, Maine, and take pictures of these baby birds, like set up pictures of them like standing on branches or being in a nest or whatever. And that was what she used to illustrate her articles. And then she would take the baby birds back to their actual nest and leave them for their parents to hopefully take care of afterwards. It was crazy. And then eventually she did get her own photography equipment. But of course, back in those days, it was so huge, she had to employ sort of young boys in the neighborhood to lug her equipment around. And like, it was very elaborate process to like set up a shot in the forest at that point. So that was all really quite fascinating as well. She was a very interesting woman, very much not traditional, did not fit in with the standards of her time, and really intelligent. And I really enjoy reading about women who wanted to pursue the sciences, particularly in those time periods, and when it wasn't okay for them to do that, and when they bucked the system and did it anyway. I find that really fascinating. Also, this book will fit for another reading challenge that is happening right now. So Justin over at Triumphal Reads is hosting a Science Readathon for the rest of the year. And each month has a different science, like broad-based theme. And September is biology or natural sciences. So this book would fit perfectly for Justin's readathon. So I'm excited that this book sort of fits two things, because that's killing two birds with one stone. So I don't know what I'm going to read for my next shorty. I do have to do some buddy reading today and a much longer book, The Deluge by Stephen Markley. I'm buddy reading that with Sean Bree's books, and I have to read my section of that today. But I probably will start another shorty as well, and I will report back when I have made some progress. Good morning. It is September 9th, and it's the morning, and I'm getting ready to start work for the day, but I figured I would check in because I finished another book for Shorty September last night. And I finished Clay's Arc by Octavia E. Butler, which is in the third book in the Patternist series of books. But to be honest, I don't know how that connects with the first two books that I read in this series. So in this one, we are following, basically there's two timelines. And each chapter is headed either past one, present one, that sort of thing. And it goes back and forth between the past and the present. But the past chapters are like only 5 or 6 years before the present chapters. And this, I don't really want to tell you very much about it. Other than to say, this is a book about basically infectious diseases and community and prejudices. And it all takes place in sort of a dystopian Earth future. And I've been reading a lot of like climate fiction recently, and so this book really seems prescient. This was published in like 1985, I believe. And Octavia E. Butler was like scarily, like she was very scarily predicting certain outcomes in society where a lot of things like extreme drought, extreme weather events have happened and are happening. And the wealthy segments of society have sort of walled themselves up inside enclaves, and everyone else is sort of left to like Mad Max beyond the Thunderdome their way to survival. And this follows a community of people who are surviving in the desert on like a settlement, sort of back to traditional farming and lifestyle type things. But there's something weird about this group of people. And as the book goes on, you figure out what's going on with this group of people. And I don't want to say any more than that, because I feel like if you go into this blind the way I did, it's more enjoyable. But I will also say, please do check trigger warnings before you read this if you're sensitive to certain things like sexual assault and underage girls being sexualized. Octavia E. Butler explores similar themes in a lot of her books, I'm finding, as I read through her books. And one thing that really squicks me out is the age with which some things happen to her characters, particularly her young women characters. And it can be really difficult to read about. So just, do your research if that's something that is a problem for you. But Octavia Butler is a fabulous storyteller. And I really appreciate what she's doing with themes of race and belonging and how we see each other and how we form communities. I really enjoy that. So yeah, this was a great read. I sat down yesterday at like 4:00 in the afternoon, and by 8:00 yesterday evening, I had finished it. So I blew through it. It was a great read for Shorty September. So that's it. I don't know what I will pick up today, but I will come back and update you once I have finished my next shorty. Good morning. It's Wednesday, and I finished another book last night for Shorty September. This is How Bad Are Bananas? The Carbon Footprint of Everything by Mike Berners-Lee. This is a book I bought in the airport in London when we went to Europe in 2023. So I'm glad to finally be getting to this. And I've been dipping in and out of it for since Shorty September began. Finally finished it up last night. This is sort of set up so that you can dip in and out of it and not read through it. I can't really show you with one hand, but it's not set up to be read straight through, because this is basically going through items that you might use in your life, in your normal life, and tells you what the carbon footprint of those things are. And so like bananas are one thing, which are not as bad as you might think. And your car, air flight, all different kinds of things, all the way up to what countries and corporations should be doing. And so I think it's really informative and useful. It's written in a very accessible style. There's lots of illustrations, charts, graphs, pie charts, all that sort of thing to help you understand the concepts. And it's really about, I thought at first I was kind of getting annoyed with the book because I thought it was focused on individual action to reduce your carbon footprint. And it's like, there's things that need to happen on a much more global scale at the corporate and the nation level in order to curb our use of carbon or our emissions of carbon, I should say. And then he gets to that at the end. And the whole last couple of chapters are about sort of bigger ideas, not just how to reduce our emissions of carbon, but how to actually take carbon out of the atmosphere. So I thought that was very interesting. It also talks about, what you can do at the end, how you can plan and work to have a low carbon lifestyle. It's a very confronting book because it forces you to sort of look at your own habits and look at your own lifestyle and see the places where you're really utilizing a lot of resources. And I think as an American, it's really confronting because the United States, uses the most energy of anywhere in the world. So, I think if, you really have to be willing to take a good hard look at your lifestyle, your privilege, where you live. And there's a lot of people in a lot of places in the world that are not contributing to the amount of carbon in our atmosphere or in our world. And they're forced to carry the burden from everyone else. So, good information, not exactly a light and fluffy read, not exactly fun, I wouldn't say, but very informative and useful, and I'm glad that I read it. So that is another one down for Shorty September. I don't know if I will get through another one before I have to close the vlog out tomorrow, but I will come back and let you know how that goes. I am reading another shorty right now. I started The Artificial Silk Girl. So we shall see if I can finish that up by the end of the day on Thursday. Well, hello. It's time to wrap up this weekly reading vlog. It is Thursday, September the 12th, and I did finish one more book this week, so that's exciting. I finished The Artificial Silk Girl by Armgard Keun. Not really sure how you say her last name, and translated from the German by Kathie von Annum. Sorry, I'm not wearing my reading glasses, and that's very small print. This is a novel that was written in the early 1930s, and it follows the story of a young woman named Doris who is in Cologne. She wants to be famous. She wants to live the good life. And so she, basically she decides to write down the story of her own life and to document her life, because she has this feeling that she's gonna go places. She's either wants to become famous or she wants to get with a wealthy man and live a life of luxury. Things don't go well for her in Cologne, which is the city that she's grown up in. And so she takes off to Berlin. And through her writing, we see, that life is not easy for a young woman on her own without a job at this time. There's a lot of really difficult, it's a difficult time employment-wise and politically and all these things, although this isn't political at all. This is all about what it's like to be a young woman in this time, in this place, particularly one who isn't very logical or practical about how she's living her life. And so she descends into poverty and flirts with being homeless and maybe taking up prostitution. But in the end, I won't tell you how it ends, but in the end, it's like a coming of age story almost, but it really doesn't resolve itself in the end. This was not really my cup of tea. I felt it's quite melancholy for me. It read very bittersweet. Doris is a hard person to really root for because she makes such poor decisions. But also she just reads really young, and she's probably in her early 20s, late teens, early 20s. And, she just reads really, really young. She thinks that, being young and fabulous and looking beautiful is going to attract the attention of the right man, and that is going to be her path to living the kind of lifestyle that she wants to live. She wants to be able to wear furs. She wants to be able to shop and buy nice things, and she doesn't want to have to work at a job that she finds boring, like being a secretary or something like that. She's not educated, and she's well aware of it, and so she feels a sense of inferiority about that. So it is an interesting look at sort of what life was like in this time, in this place, and what it was like to be a young woman. But overall, I would say the writing style just didn't appeal to me. And it was kind of written because it's Doris writing her story down in her journal, but she doesn't really use punctuation or anything like that. So it feels very stream of consciousness. And I just didn't find, I didn't find it that compelling, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm glad that I read it, but it's not one of my favorites. Although I am glad that I read it because I feel like this is a sort of a really well-known book, and I sort of feels like it was a gap in my reading life not to have read this one yet. So for that reason, plus it's another book in translation, and I'm always glad to have read another book in translation. So that was The Artificial Silk Girl. And that will be the end of this vlog. I will be starting my new vlog tomorrow. And in fact, tomorrow starts Mid-Month Book Bash. So I will be doing a vlog for Mid-Month Book Bash, as I always do. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I'll talk to you later.